America, and Danielle Moodie-Mills, host of the Sirius XM radio show, Woke AF. Thanks to all of you for being here.
Thank you, Ari.
I have a few more facts I'm going to run through, but I wanted to bring each of you in first, down the line on what we just pointed out, where the rhetoric meets the policy.
So Donald Trump is engaging in a weapon of mass distraction. He's using race to take the focus off racial conversations, hateful conversations, to take the focus, Ari, off of what you just told us, and that is that there is no comprehensive urban policy, that there's been an assault in Donald Trump's budget proposals on education programs, housing programs, an assault on the fair housing rule at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, work requirements for Medicaid, draconian policy measures. Now, they align with his rhetoric, but because we're talking about his rhetoric and his untoward attacks, these things are going to some extent unnoticed, but we notice them, we're pushing back on them, and we're fighting them. And the other thing, Ari, if African Americans are calling the White House, then I guess there are rhinoceroses, buffaloes, and elephants roosting on the roof of the White House.
Fair. Joel, you might not look scary to our viewers, and this is your first time on the beat. But what you know and what you do might be scary to Donald Trump, because he seems to want to talk about some of these problems, which I mentioned are in cities as well as in other parts of the country, as a political foil, as something to use to incite or to demean, rather than, I believe, the way you are working on them, which is we are a rich nation with a lot of people struggling to even get fed.
Well, there's no question Trump and Republicans, frankly, for decades before him, wanted to give the nation the false impression that everyone getting SNAP, the new name for food stamps, was non-white, when the largest number of Americans getting SNAP food stamps are white.
Let's pause right there.
Yes.
So he is trying to cut the food support for, as you mentioned, something that clearly goes to, and I'm not saying we should divide it up this way, but this is what the president is trying to bait us into, a program that helps kids eat. You're saying the majority of whom are white and some of whom are black, and the main thing that unites them is they're hungry.
That's correct. The states that have the highest level of SNAP food stamps participation per capita are southern states that voted for Trump. His supporters are going to learn the hard way that racism doesn't put food on the table. Not only are they taking SNAP away from 3 million Americans, most of whom are working, the rest are children, senior citizens, working people, people with disabilities, veterans, but they're taking food away from 500,000 kids in school meals, because when you lose SNAP eligibility, you also lose school meals eligibility. It is a lose-lose, and his race baiting isn't going to change that.
I mean, the reality is this, is that we've always known that Donald Trump is a racist, that his policies were going to be racist. But these people that you're talking about, the ones that have benefited from government programs, they don't care, because what LBJ said many, many years ago, if you can teach the poorest white man that he is better than the best black man, then you can pick his pockets. And Donald Trump is that used car salesman that has been going around and picking the pockets of poor working class people. And he's going around and he's saying, you know what? I know that you're racist deep down, and I'm just as racist as you are, if not more. And it doesn't matter that I've started a trade war and you, farmer, are no longer able to toil your land. It doesn't matter if I've closed the factories. It doesn't matter that I myself has benefited from putting my ties and my clothing lines into China as opposed to American factories. None of that matters. What matters is that your whiteness supersedes everything else, and you should be celebrated for that. And that is what Donald Trump is doing on a day in and day out basis.
And when you put it that starkly, and the question then becomes, is Donald Trump onto something? Because he would argue he made his narrow electoral path in the Electoral College in 2016 on this kind of race baiting. And he's saying today it's working.
Two things that are
and let me for you, let me put up the next fact I promise, which is you have Donald Trump saying, well, African-American unemployment has actually dropped. That's a piece of this. Of course, that began here, as you see, if you want to go through the history, most starkly in the turnaround after the financial crisis under Barack Obama, 9% after that recession. And then I want to mention the politics. Donald Trump claiming that African-American voters are happy with those attacks on Cummings we discussed. Let's look at this national poll, which is out new tonight. This is where America's at. Pollsters, we didn't write the question, but pollsters asking Americans whether Donald Trump is a, quote, racist. 51%, over half the country, reporting back yes, and nearly every group of voters you find a majority, including independents, Democrats, independents, women, whites with a college degree, blacks, Hispanics, younger Americans, older Americans, just about every group until you sort, Mark, by partisan ideology.
So I'd say this, that, you know, Donald Trump, his 2016 election was predicated on lower African-American turnout and the presence of a third-party candidate on the left. Those circumstances are not going to be present in 2020. I predict there's going to be massive turnout because as Donald Trump stimulates his base, he stimulates the anti-Trump base equally. The anti-Trump base, those who want a different America and want a president who unites. The other thing, Donald Trump can't own 4% unemployment on his watch and not own the rats in Baltimore. Mr. President, the rats are yours, the rodents are yours, the gun violence is yours, the opioid crisis is yours, the failure to get a deal in Korea and China and Mexico,
Given your work in the cities, and you look at what it takes to be a mayor, which is all about accountability. You just said it. You got to own the roads, you got to own the potholes, you might have to own the rats. And you have a president here who really acts like a pundit. Who, if you believe him on his best day, who just woke up and noticed these things. He's the president. Doesn't he have more power than anyone to address any of this?
He has more power than anyone. He shirked his responsibility, and he's acting as though he's president of only part of America. He wants to handpick the counties, the neighborhoods, and the communities that he's going to lead.
And so
he's the president of all of America.
Let me bring Danielle in on let's talk about the burbs for a second, okay? There's a lot
Where I'm from, so let's not all pretend that only white people live in the burbs.
Okay, there you have it. We're crushing a lot of misleading tropes tonight. The burbs, we're told, actually don't like this at all. I want to read some quotes from suburban women. Quote, "I don't like the way he talks about other people. I'm just ashamed to be an American right now. Of all the people, of the disrespect and the lies and the stuff, it's too much for me. And the way he treats people, it's horrible."
Yeah, well, you know, I'm glad that these women that were asked their opinions on Donald Trump and his rhetoric that are now speaking out and saying, "Oh my goodness." There was one woman in that report that said, you know, sometimes you just need a strong businessman, and this is how you know business is done. And I'm saying that's how patriarchy is done. That's this idea that you're allowed to be a jerk, that you're allowed to talk down to people and to demoralize them because that's what it takes to get the job done. So that is them being steeped in patriarchy. And the other thing is that many of these women are the same. They're the 53% that voted for Donald Trump in the first place. And now they're surprised that he's actually who he said he was going to be. So I'm glad that they are waking up. But should they be applauded for it? I don't think so.
Understood.
And nor do you need a poll to tell you that Donald Trump is a racist.
Right.
I think it's great because pollsters need jobs, but all you need are eyes and ears and to be able to read Twitter. So then you would know that he's a racist. So I think that America has to decide, and white America in particular has to decide how they want to show up and who they want to be and how they want to model their families, their children, and their future.